Hello everyone, I'm JG and welcome back to Music Forever, where today I'm bringing you guys a brand new track review video where I can talk about several recently released songs that I happen to hear and have some opinions on. There's a lot of tracks I want to talk about here today, so I'm just going to get right into things. The first song I want to talk about is this new JPEGMAFIA track, Jesus Forgive Me, I Am a Thot. This is supposed to be his new single from his upcoming album, project, whatever it's going to be that we're getting from him soon, I'm guessing. And overall, I really like this track. I think it has a nice mixture of a lot of the elements that I liked in JPEGMAFIA previously, while also bringing some new ideas to the table as well. I like with the instrumental to this track, how it has a mix of that kind of industrial, glitchy sound that he had going for him on previous projects, but I also like how it has a bit of a spacier, kind of upbeat sound to it as well. It kind of reminds me of that track, The Who, that he dropped earlier this year. That track also had a pretty upbeat feel to it. However, that was like a leftover track, I believe, not a brand new song for an upcoming project. So I'm kind of interested to see that appearing again here on this new song. I also really like Peggy's flow and lyrics on this track as well. I think he strikes a nice balance between his more aggressive form of delivery and this more laid-back, kind of sarcastic style as well. It's kind of like he's just flowing back and forth between the two on this track seamlessly, and some of the singing that he does here on this track is also pretty nice as well. Overall, this track really has a lot of what I like in JPEGMAFIA's music, a really fantastic, interesting beat to it, great delivery on his part when it comes to the rapping and singing, really quirky, interesting lyrics as well. Overall, this song has me really excited to hear whatever upcoming project we're going to be getting from him soon. Yeah, fantastic track, one that you should definitely check out if you're a hip-hop fan. Moving on, let's stick with the theme of kind of weird, off-kilter hip-hop that's going to be having an upcoming release soon with this new clipping track that's going to be a part of their upcoming album that's going to be released later this year. The name of the track is Nothing Is Safe, and overall, like the JPEGMAFIA song, I really like this track as well. One thing I really like about it is right off the bat, it sounds really different than what they were doing on their last album. Compared to that project, this song feels a bit more standalone. Like, all the songs on that last album of theirs flowed together really nicely. They made this really great overarching experience, but very few of the songs on that thing, I think, stood on their own, really, as tracks you would listen to by themselves. Not necessarily a bad thing. I love that record for the record, no pun intended, but this new song here feels a lot more like something I could see being listened to by itself, and I'm wondering if this new record is going to be more of the same in that regard. The instrumental to this track is really interesting. I like the very dark, almost horror movie-like atmosphere that it has to it. Like, I can just see this kind of track, just the instrumental to it, working really nicely in the background of some horror movie or something with how this sounds, and given the release date of this thing being very close to October, I'm wondering if this whole album is going to have this very creepy Halloween-like vibe to it. I think David's flow and lyrics on this track are really great too. They match up really nicely, not only with the beat and how it progresses here on the song, but they also, when it comes to the lyrics and the substance to them, provide a very nice kind of horrific atmosphere too that matches up nicely with the sound that the instrumental is going for as well. Overall, I love the instrumental to this track. I love the flow here, I love the lyrics, I love the kind of scary horror movie-like vibe this song has going for it as well. Really, it's just a fantastic song, and I'm really excited to hear this new clipping album later this year if what we're going to be getting is more like this. Moving on, though, let's stay on the topic of kind of weirdo alternative hip-hop with this new Brockhampton track, Boy Bye, which overall, like a lot of the other songs that Brockhampton have teased for their upcoming record, I think this song is also really good. My favorite part about this track is definitely the instrumental, which, like the instrumentals to the two songs that they previously dropped from their upcoming record, has this kind of playful, upbeat, but at the same time kind of off-kilter vibe to it. It's really interesting and standout and quirky, and given that it's something I really love to hear from Brockhampton, I just really like the direction that this instrumental's going, and I'm really excited to see overall what the sonic palette of their upcoming record is going to sound like given these three tracks we've already gotten. Outside of the instrumental to this thing, when it comes to the verses present here on this track, I really like them all. I think that they all showcase the individual members' personalities really nicely, in a way that doesn't really make the track feel really scatterbrained and all over the place. They still sound really coherent and together here on this one track, even though that all the verses here still at the same time showcase a lot of the individual members' strengths and personalities in a way that I really enjoy. And I also really appreciate the nice, tight, short package that this track comes in. It's not a very long song, but at the same time, I feel like there's a good lot that's happening in this track's runtime to not make it feel, too short for its own good or something like that. The instrumental to this thing is really quirky and fun. I think all the verses sound really great put over it, and the content to these verses is pretty great as well. Overall, yeah, I'm still pretty excited to hear this new Brockhampton album, given all 3 songs we've previously heard from it. Yeah, this is definitely another track worth checking out. Moving on, let's move away from hip-hop for a bit to talk about some different genres of music with these upcoming tracks I want to discuss, the first couple of which happen to come from the same artist, Waterparks. The first of these 2 songs I'm going to discuss is Watch What Happens Next. And overall, I think this is a pretty decent track. My favorite part of it is probably the lyrics here, because on this track the band is essentially talking about how, for rock bands out there, themselves included, it seems like a lot of times the band can't really move into a different style of music or play around with different sounds without having a good portion of their fan base kind of turn on them. The band talks about on this track how their overall goal in music is essentially to, sustain themselves, to make enough money to live and eat and be healthy people, as opposed to, just making music for the sake of making music. Of course, that's not to say that they don't make music because they like to make music. Obviously they do, but at the same time they acknowledge here in this track that they have to be making some kind of money in order to keep living and making this music. And if they're not making that money, it's not a good thing. And of course, here on this track, they tie it together with what I mentioned previously by essentially saying that when rock bands kind of change their sound a bit, they of course end up making less money because less fans care about it, and as a result this ends up hurting the band and their ability to make more music that they want to make, and oftentimes they feel trapped wanting to make the same kind of music again and again, essentially, because that's what their fan base wants. So if they want to make enough money to, live, essentially, they have to keep doing that. The band even references here on this track Lil Nas X's Old Town Road kind of indirectly as an example of how another genre, hip-hop in particular, is able to, play around with different sounds more freely while still having the artist be accepted, because of course Old Town Road, if you didn't know, was a pretty big hit song. In fact, it was #1 on the Billboard charts for the longest amount of time out of any song, which is kind of crazy to think about when you consider that that track was playing around with some sounds that really weren't super popular in hip-hop before then. And Waterparks are essentially saying here on this song, how could this happen in hip-hop, but when it comes to rock bands, we're not allowed to, stray from our core sound, or, we won't even be able to make enough money to get by. Essentially, on this track, the band is calling out a portion of their fan base for not being open to the new sounds the band wants to play around with, and essentially calling out rock music fan bases in general for not being accepting and open to new ideas, which is certainly an idea that I could see every day in rock communities that oftentimes are a bit more closed-minded than, say, hip-hop fan bases. I could definitely understand where the band is coming from with the lyrics on this track, and I'm happy that they went into as much detail as they did on the lyrics in this song. So overall, I really like the lyrics present here on this track. When it comes to everything else here, though, I still think it's pretty solid, but a fair bit less memorable. I do think that the hook to this track is pretty catchy, and everything else in the song is at least solidly performed. However, I do think the instrumental to this song just isn't necessarily the most memorable to come out of this band's discography. It is kind of ironic, I feel, that on the track where the band is talking about how they feel kind of confined and unable to explore different sounds at the cost of losing money or fans, that the sound of this track just isn't all that, experimental or out there. Still, it's a decent track, however, and one that's still worth checking out. Moving on, the second track from Waterparks to drop recently was Dream Boy, a track that I think lyrically does share some similar ideas to the track I was just talking about how fans will look up to a band or a particular artist and kind of idolize them in a way that's pretty unhealthy. Essentially, the band's kind of calling out this idea and kind of exposing it to be a pretty, bad mindset to have here on this song. The lyrics go into a fair bit less detail than the previous track I was talking about with this. However, I still do think that they get the point across nicely enough. Compared to Watch What Happens Next, though, I do feel like the performances and instrumental on this track is stronger. I think that the hook to this track is really catchy and memorable. I think that the instrumental to this track is a fair bit more memorable as well, even if it's still not super experimental or anything. Overall, this is once again a pretty solid track from Waterparks. I'm kind of interested to see what direction they're going to go in on this upcoming album of theirs, given these 2 songs. Moving on, the next track I want to discuss is this new Opeth song, Dignity, as well as its Swedish counterpart. If you are unfamiliar with the band and their upcoming release, they're doing 2 versions of the album, one in English, one in Swedish. So we essentially got 2 versions of the song, one with the lyrics sung in English and one where it's sung in Swedish. I don't really think that there's much of a difference between both versions of the track. I think both are about the same quality. Of course, if you happen to speak and understand Swedish, you might enjoy that version of the track more than the English version, though given that I'm someone who doesn't, I can't really comment on that aspect of the song personally. However, I do still enjoy this track, all things considered. I think I like it a fair bit more than the first single that the band dropped from this upcoming album of theirs as well. I like the various phases that this track goes through over the course of its runtime. I like the very grand and bombastic start to this track before it moves into this quieter, slower section. Following that, though, the track does a bit of building up to this big climax towards the end of the song that I also really enjoy. Overall, from a songwriting standpoint, I think this is a really nicely put together track. I think the vocal performances on this track, of both versions of this track that is, are both really solid as well. They really help sell a lot of the emotion present here in the song too, and they just match up very nicely with whatever vibe the particular portion of the track is trying to go for. All things considered, I think this is a pretty good track. Not too many bad things to really say about it. I mean, I wouldn't say it's one of the band's best or most memorable songs overall or anything, but it's still pretty enjoyable, and if you're a fan of the band, you should definitely check it out, and it has me pretty interested to see what the band is going to do on this upcoming project of theirs. Moving on, the next track I want to talk about is this new song from Code Orange, Let Me In. Now, I do want to say before actually talking about this track itself and the more specific details concerning it, this track was made, I guess, in partnership with the WWE to be used as like a theme song or something for the WWE. I know nothing about the WWE, if that's not already apparent to you, so I can't really comment on this song in relation to that, and I'm not sure if there might be something I'm missing here in this song when it comes to analyzing it or anything like that, that I might understand if I was more familiar with the WWE, but yeah, I just want to say before actually talking about the track that I know nothing about the WWE. It's not really my thing. Don't know anything about it. So yeah, I just came into this song hoping that it was going to be enjoyable considering I like Code Orange. All things considered, I think this is a pretty average song from Code Orange. It's not a song I really love or really even like all that much, but at the same time I don't dislike it either. But for the most part, my biggest problem with this song is that it kind of feels throughout its run like it's building towards something that never really ends up coming. Like, I just get the feeling that I'm supposed to be anticipating something when listening to this that just never ends up arriving, which is kind of disappointing. I will say that I really like the crushing industrial metal-like guitars on this thing. They're pretty enjoyable to listen to, and maybe in the context of whatever they're being used with in the WWE, it makes a bit more sense and it's a bit more enjoyable, but just taken on its own, I don't know, this track just feels kind of forgettable. I mostly just recommend this to the hardcore Code Orange fans out there, because I feel like if you're not in that group of people, there's probably better material from the band that you should start with first. And moving on, the final song I want to talk about here today is this new track from Toxic Holocaust, Chemical Warlords. Overall, I don't have a ton to say about this song, honestly, because I don't really have much of a strong opinion on it. I mean, it's just a pretty typical song from these guys. I mean, it has a nice energy to it. I like the thrashy vibe that's present here. There's certainly a fair amount of aggression on here that's pretty enjoyable too, but I don't know, the track just feels a bit too typical for me personally. Like, there's very little on it that I think is going to stick with me in the upcoming days and weeks. The song's composition is pretty okay, all things considered, and the performances on it are pretty decent as well, and like I said before, the energy here is, you know, definitely there, but I don't know, I just find this track really forgettable, and I don't think I'm going to remember much about it in the upcoming days and weeks. But yeah, that's all I really have to say about that, and that's all the songs I wanted to cover here in today's video. If you happen to have an opinion on any of these songs different than my own, that's perfectly fine. In fact, feel free to leave your own thoughts on any of these songs in the comment section down below. And while you're down there, make sure you also leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel for more music-related content. Things like album reviews, more track reviews, things of that sort. I will be reviewing the upcoming releases from some of the artists I talked about here today. So if you want to see my thoughts on like the new JPEGMAFIA, whenever that drops, the new Clipping, the new Brockhampton, make sure you subscribe because I'll definitely be reviewing those. Once again, guys, thank you for watching, and stay golden.